The meeting room was cold and silent. Admiral Kyle Harrison sat at the long metal table, his hands folded in front of him. His gray hair was neat, his uniform pressed perfectly, but his eyes showed the weight he carried. Next to him, Ambassador Diana Foster adjusted her notes one more time. She had spent 30 years learning about alien cultures. She knew this meeting might be their last chance for peace. Captain Vincent Cruz stood near the door, watching everything. His hand stayed close to his weapon, though he hoped he would not need it. Dr. Helen Nakamura sat quietly at the end of the table, her tablet recording every word. She was only 32, but she understood what was happening. History was being made today. Bad history. The doors opened with a loud sound. Princess Kaylara Vin Therax entered first. She wore full battle armor. Even though this was a peace meeting, the armor was covered with symbols of her family. It shined under the lights. She was tall, much taller than any human. Her skin was silver with scales that caught the light. Her golden eyes looked at each human carefully. Behind her came High Chancellor Orthak. He was old, his scales faded with age. He walked slowly, but his eyes were sharp. War Commander Draxus followed last. He was covered in scars from many battles. He looked at the humans like they were insects. Princess Kaylara sat down across from Admiral Harrison. Her armor made a heavy sound against the chair. She did not remove her helmet. The message was clear. She came ready for war, not peace. Ambassador Foster spoke first. Her voice was calm and professional. She had done this many times before. She talked about the need for peace. She mentioned trade agreements and shared borders. She spoke of cooperation between their two peoples. Chancellor Orthak listened, but his face showed no emotion. When Ambassador Foster finished, he spoke. His voice was cold. He said the Valthek Empire had ruled this part of space for 200 years. Humans were newcomers. They should respect Valthek authority. Admiral Harrison remained silent. He watched Princess Kaylara. She was young for a commander, maybe 40 in human years, but she sat like someone who had seen real combat. Her posture was perfect. Her eyes missed nothing. The discussions continued for an hour. Both sides presented their positions. Then Ambassador Foster brought out the evidence. She displayed images on the large screen. 3 human colonies had been attacked in the past month. Ships destroyed. Buildings burned. People killed. The images were difficult to look at. Dr. Nakamura looked away from some of them. Captain Cruz's jaw tightened. These were their people, their families. Chancellor Orthak barely glanced at the images. He waved his hand dismissively. Those colonies were built on sacred Valthek territory, he said. The humans had been warned. They did not listen. The attacks were justified. Ambassador Foster's voice grew harder. Those systems were colonized legally, she said. Galactic law supported human claims. The Valthek had no right to attack. War Commander Draxus laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Galactic law, he said, was made by the strong. The Valthek were strong. Humans were not. Therefore, Valthek law mattered. Human law did not. Princess Kaylara had been quiet during most of the meeting. Now she leaned forward. She studied the humans across from her. They should be afraid, she thought. They should be begging for mercy. The Valthek fleet had 3,000 warships. Human intelligence said they only had 800 ships in this sector, but these humans showed no fear. Admiral Harrison sat calmly. Ambassador Foster spoke with confidence. Even the young scientists seemed more sad than scared. This confused the princess. Why were they not afraid? War Commander Draxus stood up. His voice filled the room. The Valthek Empire demanded that humans leave 15 star systems immediately. They had 72 hours to begin evacuation. If they refused, the Valthek Armada would remove them by force. The room went silent. Ambassador Foster looked at Admiral Harrison. He gave a small shake of his head. She closed her files slowly. Admiral Harrison spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. He said the answer was no. Those systems belonged to humanity. They were settled legally. Families lived there. Children were born there. Humans would not abandon them. Chancellor Orthak made a sound of disgust. Foolish, he said. The Valthek fleet would crush them. Human ships were no match for Valthek warriors. Princess Kaylara stood. Her armor seemed even bigger as she rose. She towered over the seated humans. She was princess of the greatest empire in this sector. daughter of the Eternal Emperor, commander of fleets that had conquered 12 star systems, she delivered the final ultimatum. 72 hours. Leave the disputed systems or face total war. The full might of the Valthek Armada would descend upon human space. No mercy would be shown. No quarter would be given. Dr. Nakamura felt her hands shake. She had studied the Valthek military. They were powerful, brutal. They did not make empty threats. But Admiral Harrison just stood up slowly. He was shorter than Princess Kalara by almost a foot. His uniform had no weapons displayed. No armor, no signs of aggression. He looked tired, old, human. He looked directly into Princess Kailara's golden eyes. When he spoke, his voice was sad. Not angry, not afraid, just sad. Then you have chosen war with a species you do not understand, he said. Something about his tone made Princess Kailara pause. It was not a threat. It was a warning. But a warning about what? Admiral Harrison nodded to his team. Ambassador Foster gathered her materials. Captain Cruz opened the door. Dr. Nakamura stood on shaking legs. They walked out in perfect order. No running, no panic. No desperate last pleas for peace. The Valthek delegation watched them go. War Commander Draxus smiled with satisfaction. Weak humans, he thought. They would break easily. Chancellor Orthak nodded with approval. The Empire's superiority had been proven once again. But Princess Kalara stood very still. She stared at the door where the humans had left. That Admiral's eyes haunted her. They were not the eyes of someone who expected to lose. They were the eyes of someone who knew something she did not. The station's artificial intelligence spoke through the speakers. Its voice was neutral and mechanical. Peace talks have officially concluded without agreement. All parties may depart at their convenience. Princess Kalara removed her helmet finally. Her silver face was troubled. War Commander Draxus was already planning the attack. Chancellor Orthak was composing his victory speech. But she could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to beg. They were supposed to show fear. But they had shown nothing. Nothing but sad acceptance. Like they knew what was coming. Like they had seen it all before. The princess looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human fleet was waiting. 800 ships against 3,000. It should be an easy victory, so why did she feel afraid? The war room aboard the Eternal Glory was massive. Holographic displays filled the space with blue light. They showed star systems, ship positions, and tactical data. War Commander Draxus stood at the center, pointing at different locations. His voice was full of confidence. 3,000 warships, he announced. The largest fleet assembled in over a century. The humans have only 800 ships defending those systems. We outnumber them almost 4-1. The other Valthek officers cheered. They raised their fists in celebration. Victory seemed certain. Easy. The humans would be crushed within days, maybe hours. Chancellor Orthak stood on the upper platform. He smiled down at the gathered warriors. He began to speak about Valthek destiny, about their rightful place as rulers of this sector, about how inferior species must bow before superior ones. The officers listened with pride in their eyes. Princess Kalara sat on her command throne at the back of the room. She had removed her armor finally. She wore a simple military uniform now, but she did not join the celebration. Her golden eyes watched the displays carefully. Something bothered her, something she could not name. After the meeting ended, she returned to her private quarters. The room was filled with data screens. She pulled up human military history files. She had looked at these before, but not carefully. Now she read every detail. The records went back hundreds of years. World War I, World War II, regional conflicts, colonial wars. The first contact war when humans met their first alien species. She read battle reports, casualty numbers, strategic analyses. A pattern emerged. Humans lost battles but won wars. They took terrible losses but kept fighting. When they were pushed back, they came back stronger. When they seemed defeated, they found new ways to win. She found a record from the First Contact War. Humans had faced the Zix Empire 80 years ago. The Zix had superior numbers and technology. They thought humans would surrender quickly. Instead, the war lasted 5 years. The Zix Empire collapsed. Humans survived. The door chimed. A young Valthek officer entered. His name was Vexar. He was one of Princess Kalara's most trusted advisors. He was smart and careful, not like the aggressive older commanders. "Your Highness," Vexar said quietly, "I share your concerns." Princess Kalara looked up at him. "You have read the human records too?" Vexar nodded. "I have. They never lose." "Not really. They adapt. They learn. They become more dangerous when cornered." The princess stood and walked to the window. Space stretched out before her. Stars everywhere, and somewhere out there human ships waited. "What do you think they are planning?" she asked. Vexar moved to stand beside her. "I do not know, but that admiral's face troubles me." He was not afraid. He was sad, like he knew what would happen and wished it could be different. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Princess Kalara shook her head. "Perhaps we are overthinking this. Our fleet is superior. Our weapons are proven. The numbers favor us greatly." "Perhaps," Vexar agreed, but he did not sound convinced. The 72 hours passed slowly. Valthek ships moved into position around the disputed systems. They formed attack formations. Weapons were charged. Shields were raised. Every ship was ready for battle. Human colonies had been evacuated. Civilian ships had fled to safer systems, but the military ships remained. 800 vessels in defensive positions. They did not run. They did not hide. They waited. Princess Kalara stood on the command deck of the Eternal Glory. Her armor was back on. She looked like a warrior princess from ancient legends. But inside, doubt gnawed at her confidence. War Commander Draxus was excited. He paced back and forth. "Finally," he said. "Finally we show these humans their place. They will regret refusing our generous offer." Chancellor Orthak stood with his hands clasped behind his back. "This is a historic moment," he declared. "Future generations will remember this day. The day the Valthek Empire crushed human arrogance. A human broadcast came through on all frequencies. It was a human admiral, not the one from the peace talks. A different voice. Female. Clear and strong. Valthek Fleet, this is Admiral Patricia Monroe of the Human Defense Force. You are violating galactic law. Turn back now. You do not want this war. I repeat, turn back now." War Commander Draxus laughed loudly. The other officers joined him. "Turn back, they outnumber us. This is weakness speaking. This is fear." But Princess Kalara heard something else in that voice. Not fear, warning, like someone trying to stop a child from making a terrible mistake. The tone reminded her of her own mother, long dead when Kalara had been young and foolish. The countdown reached 0. 72 hours had passed exactly. The deadline expired at precisely 800 station time. War Commander Draxus raised his hand. His voice boomed across the command deck. "All ships, open fire!" 3,000 Valthek warships unleashed their weapons at once. Energy beams lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked through space. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. The display was awesome and terrible. Human ships took hits. Some were damaged. A few exploded in brilliant flashes. War Commander Draxus cheered. Chancellor Orthak smiled with satisfaction. "See," he said. "They fall easily." But Princess Kalara watched more carefully. The human ships were damaged but not destroyed. They held formation. They did not panic. They did not retreat. Instead, they began returning fire with precision. Every human shot hit its target. Vexar appeared at her side. His face was worried. "Your Highness, their weapons are more powerful than our intelligence suggested, and their accuracy is remarkable." Princess Kalara nodded slowly. Her hands gripped the armrests of her throne. Something was wrong. The humans were fighting too well, too calmly. Like they knew something the Valthek did not. Then Admiral Kyle Harrison's voice came through every speaker. It was calm, almost gentle, like he was explaining something to children. "You were warned," just 2 words. But they sent ice through Princess Kalara's veins. The tactical display began to change. New contacts appeared. Dozens of them. Hundreds, all around the Valthek fleet. Red markers blooming like blood in water. A junior officer shouted in confusion. "Contact, multiple contacts. Ships decloaking all around us." Princess Kalara stood up from her throne. Her armor suddenly felt very heavy. She stared at the display in growing horror. War Commander Draxus's smile vanished. Chancellor Orthak took a step backward. All across the command deck, Valthek warriors stared in shock. The 800 human ships they could see had not been the full fleet. They had been bait. The real fleet had been hidden, cloaked, invisible to Valthek sensors. And now they appeared, one by one. Ship after ship after ship, materializing from nothing, surrounding the Valthek fleet completely. The tactical officer's voice shook as he counted. 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,100 contacts. Your Highness, they have more ships than we do. Princess Kaelara felt the blood drain from her face. She had led the Valthek Empire's greatest fleet into a trap so perfect, so complete that she never saw it coming. And now, surrounded by human warships, she finally understood Admiral Harrison's sad eyes. He had known this would happen. He had tried to warn them, but they had not listened. The silence on the Valthek command deck was complete. Every warrior stared at the tactical display. Red markers everywhere. Human ships surrounded them like a closing fist. 2,100 against 3,000 sounded almost fair. But position mattered, and the humans controlled every escape route. War Commander Draxus's face had lost all color. His scales seemed to pale in the blue light of the displays. He opened his mouth twice before words came out. Full retreat. All ships, full retreat! Princess Kaelara's voice cut through his order like a blade. Belay that command! The command deck fell silent again. Every eye turned to her. War Commander Draxus stared in shock. Your Highness, we must retreat while we can. We are surrounded. Princess Kaelara removed her helmet. Her silver face was calm, but her golden eyes blazed with intensity. If we run, they will destroy us. Look at their positions. They control every exit. Running would be suicide. Chancellor Orthak stepped forward, his voice shaking. Then what do you suggest? That we surrender? We wait, Princess Kaelara said firmly. We hold position, and we see what they do next. The human ships did not fire. Not immediately. They simply held their positions. A perfect sphere of warships surrounding the Valthek fleet. It was like being inside a cage made of steel and weapons. Vexar appeared at Princess Kaelara's side. He spoke quietly so only she could hear. You understand what they are showing us? She nodded slowly. They could have attacked when we were vulnerable. When our ships were spread out for the assault, they could have destroyed hundreds of our vessels before we knew they were there. But they waited. They wanted us to see. Vexar's voice was grim. They are showing mercy, while demonstrating power. This is a lesson, Your Highness. A very expensive lesson. Admiral Harrison's voice came through the speakers again. All Valthek vessels, power down your weapons. This is your only warning. War Commander Draxus made a sound of rage. Never. We are warriors of the Valthek Empire. We do not surrender. Then the human ships moved. All of them. At exactly the same moment. Like they were one organism instead of thousands of separate vessels. They executed a tactical maneuver so precise, so perfectly coordinated, that it was beautiful and terrifying. Each human ship targeted a specific Valthek vessel. Not the whole ship, just the weapon systems. Targeting computers locked on with surgical accuracy. Fire, Admiral Harrison said quietly. 2,100 human ships fired at once, but they did not fire to kill. Every shot was calculated. Every target was chosen carefully. Weapon systems exploded across 300 Valthek warships. Guns melted. Missile bays detonated. Energy weapons shorted out. But the ships themselves remained intact. Crews were unharmed. Life support continued. Engines still worked. The vessels were crippled, not destroyed. Princess Kaelara watched in stunned silence. 300 ships disabled in seconds. Not by overwhelming force. By perfect precision. The message was clear. Humans could have killed everyone. But they chose not to. Chancellor Orthak sat down heavily in the nearest chair. His proud posture was gone. He suddenly looked very old and very tired. War Commander Draxus stood frozen. His hands shook. All his aggressive confidence had vanished. He understood now. The Valthek Empire, conqueror of 12 star systems, was helpless before human power. A junior officer's voice came from the communications station. Your Highness, Admiral Harrison is requesting to speak with you. Direct channel. Princess Kalara took a deep breath. Her armor felt like a costume now, a child's dress-up clothes. She had worn it to show strength, to intimidate. Now it just reminded her of how wrong she had been. Open the channel, she commanded. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the main screen. He looked the same as before, calm, tired, sad. He did not look like a victor. He looked like someone who had just done something necessary but unpleasant. Princess Kalara, he said. His voice was respectful, not mocking, not triumphant, just respectful. We need to talk. She straightened in her throne. She was still princess of the Valthek Empire, still heir to the eternal emperor. She would not show weakness, even in defeat. I am listening, Admiral. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly. Good, because I have a proposal for you, one that I hope you will consider carefully. Around Princess Kalara, the command deck waited in silence. Every warrior looked at her. They had followed her into battle. They had trusted her judgment, and now their lives depended on what happened next. She thought about the peace talks, about Admiral Harrison's sad eyes, about his warning. You have chosen war with a species you do not understand. Now she understood. Finally, she understood. Humans did not want war. They prepared for it. They were ready for it. They were terrifyingly good at it. But they did not want it. That was what made them truly dangerous. Not their weapons, not their technology, their restraint. A species that could destroy you but chose not to. A species that could win through violence but preferred peace. The Valthek had never encountered anything like this. They conquered or they were conquered. There was no middle ground, but humans were showing them a different way. A harder way, perhaps. It was easy to destroy. It was hard to show mercy to an enemy who had threatened your people. Princess Kalara realized her hands were shaking. She gripped the armrests harder to steady them. She had come here to demonstrate Valthek's superiority, to crush human resistance, to prove the Empire's power. Instead, she had learned humility. She had learned fear. She had learned respect. Your proposal, Admiral? She asked. Her voice was steady despite everything. What are your terms? Admiral Harrison's expression softened slightly. First, all Valthek vessels will power down their weapons. You will hold position while we create a neutral meeting space. Then you and I will talk, face to face. No armies, no advisors who want war, just two people trying to find a better solution. War Commander Draxus made a sound of protest, but Princess Kalara silenced him with a look. She turned back to the screen. And if I refuse? Admiral Harrison's face grew sad again. Then we will disable the rest of your fleet. And we will have this conversation anyway. But many more of your people will be humiliated in the process. I would prefer to avoid that. Princess Kalara understood. He was giving her a choice. Surrender with dignity or be forced into submission. Either way, the outcome was the same. But one path preserved honor. The other destroyed it. She stood from her throne. Her armor clinked with the movement. She looked around at her command deck, at her officers, her warriors, her people. All ships, she commanded. Power down weapons. Hold position. Maintain shields, but take no aggressive action. War Commander Draxus looked like he wanted to argue, but he saw her face and stayed silent. Princess Kalara turned back to Admiral Harrison. I accept your proposal. When do we meet? Within the hour, Admiral Harrison replied. I will send coordinates for a holographic conference space. Bring whoever you trust. Leave behind anyone who cannot set aside their pride. The screen went dark. Princess Kalara stood alone in the center of the command deck. Around her, 3,000 Valthek warships sat powerless, surrounded, defeated, without being destroyed. The great Valthek Empire had gone to war, and they had lost before the real fighting even began. Now Princess Kalara had to face the hardest challenge of her life. Not battle, not conquest. but learning to make peace with an enemy she had completely misunderstood. The holographic conference room appeared around Princess Kaylara like magic. One moment she stood on the command deck of the Eternal Glory. The next she was in a simple white room. The walls glowed softly. A round table sat in the center with chairs around it. She still wore her armor, but now it felt different. Not like protection, like a reminder of her failure. She reached up and removed her helmet. Her silver hair fell free around her shoulders. If she was going to learn, she would do it honestly. Admiral Kyle Harrison appeared across from her. He wore his uniform but no weapons. Ambassador Diana Foster materialized next to him, followed by Captain Vincent Cruz. All three looked at Princess Kaylara with calm, measuring eyes. Princess Kaylara had brought only Vexar. He stood behind her, quiet and observant. She had left War Commander Draxus and Chancellor Orthak behind. They were not ready for this conversation. Perhaps they never would be. For a long moment, no one spoke. Princess Kaylara studied the humans. They did not look triumphant. They did not look proud. They looked tired. Relieved, perhaps, but mostly tired. Finally, she asked the question that burned in her mind. Why did you not destroy us? You had the advantage. You could have wiped out our entire fleet before we knew what was happening. Why show mercy? Admiral Harrison sat down at the table. He gestured for everyone else to sit as well. When all were seated, he spoke. His voice was gentle but firm. Because war is not about winning, Princess. It is about what happens after the winning. If we destroyed your fleet, what then? Your empire would send more ships. We would destroy those too. Eventually, we might conquer your entire civilization. But then what? Rule over people who hate us? Live in constant fear of rebellion? Ambassador Foster leaned forward. We learned this lesson the hard way, Princess Kaylara. Thousands of years ago on our homeworld. We fought wars that nearly destroyed us. We built weapons that could kill millions in seconds. We did terrible things to each other. Dr. Helen Nakamura appeared in another chair. She must have just joined the hologram. She carried a tablet device. May I show you something? Princess Kaylara nodded slowly. Images appeared in the air above the table. Human cities in ruins, mushroom clouds rising into poison skies, bodies in the streets, children crying. Entire landscapes burned and dead. This was World War II, Dr. Nakamura explained quietly. We killed over 60 million of our own people. We created weapons that could burn cities to ash in seconds. We were very good at destroying each other. More images appeared. Different wars, different weapons, but always the same result: death, destruction, suffering. Princess Kaylara watched in silence. Her golden eyes grew wider with each image. We nearly destroyed ourselves, Admiral Harrison continued. Multiple times. We came very close to making our own planet uninhabitable, but we learned. Slowly. Painfully. We learned that winning a war means nothing if you lose your humanity in the process. Princess Kaylara found her voice. But you still prepare for war. You still build weapons. You still maintain fleets. Admiral Harrison nodded. Yes. Because we learned another lesson too. Peace only works when everyone chooses it. There will always be those who prefer violence. So we prepare, we train, we build weapons we hope to never use. We become strong so we never have to fight. That makes no sense, Princess Kaylara said. You become warriors who do not want war? You build weapons to prevent their use. Ambassador Foster smiled sadly. It is a paradox, yes. But it works. If we were weak, others would attack us. If we were only strong, others would fear us. But by being strong and choosing peace, we show a different path. Princess Kaylara thought about this. She looked at Vexar. He met her eyes and nodded slightly. He understood. Maybe she was beginning to understand too. Why did you not demonstrate your power earlier? She asked. At the peace talks. You could have shown us your hidden fleet then. We might have listened. Admiral Harrison's eyes were knowing. Would you have? Would your pride have allowed you to back down without seeing proof? Or would you have thought we were bluffing? Princess Kaylara felt heat rise in her face. She knew the answer. She would not have believed them. The Valthek culture valued strength above all. Words without demonstration meant nothing. They would have seen restraint as weakness. Just as War Commander Draxus had, I see, she said quietly. Captain Cruz spoke for the first time. His voice was rough but honest. We do not enjoy this, Princess. We do not celebrate your defeat. Every time we have to show our power, we remember our own history. We remember what happens when violence becomes the only answer, so we try to find other ways. But we will not let our people be destroyed. We refuse to lose. The word struck Princess Kalara deeply. These humans were not cruel. They were not heartless. They were survivors who had learned hard lessons. They knew war's true cost in a way the Valthek Empire never had. The Valthek conquered others. They never experienced real defeat themselves. "What do you want from us?" she asked. "What are your demands?" Admiral Harrison pulled out a data device. He placed it on the table. A document appeared in the air. Princess Kalara read it carefully. Her eyes grew wider with each line. "This is your treaty?" she asked in disbelief. "You keep the disputed systems, but you offer technology exchange. You propose a mutual defense pact? You want cultural exchange programs?" Ambassador Foster nodded. "We want neighbors, Princess. Not subjects. Not enemies. Neighbors who can help each other grow, learn from each other, protect each other from greater threats that might come. This is victory without humiliation." Vexar whispered behind Princess Kalara. They could demand anything. Instead, they offer partnership. Princess Kalara felt overwhelmed. Her world had turned upside down in just a few hours. Everything she thought she knew about strength and weakness had been challenged. The humans were stronger than the Valthek, but they did not act like conquerors. They acted like teachers. She stood from the table. Her armor felt even heavier now. She reached to her chest and removed her family crest. It was an ancient piece, worn by generations of Valthek royalty, worth more than most ships. She held it out to Admiral Harrison. "I came here expecting to conquer. Instead, I have been taught. This is a sign of respect among my people. Wear it and know that I understand the lesson you have given us." Admiral Harrison stood and took the crest carefully. He held it like something precious. Then he removed his admiral's insignia from his uniform. He offered it to Princess Kalara. "In our culture, this represents leadership earned through service, not through conquest. Wear it and remember that true strength is knowing when not to fight." Princess Kalara took the insignia. Her hands trembled slightly. She attached it next to her own military awards. It looked small and simple compared to her elaborate Valthek decorations. But somehow it felt more important than all of them combined. Ambassador Foster smiled. The first genuine smile Princess Kalara had seen from any human. "This is the beginning of something good, Princess. I can feel it." Princess Kalara looked at each human in turn. Admiral Harrison with his tired but kind eyes. Ambassador Foster with her years of wisdom. Captain Cruz with his honest warrior's spirit. Dr. Nakamura with her eager intelligence. These were not monsters, not conquerors. They were people who had survived their own worst impulses and learned to be better. And now they were offering the Valthek Empire the same opportunity. "I will bring this treaty to my father, the Emperor," Princess Kalara said. "I will recommend acceptance, and I will begin the difficult work of changing how my people think about strength." Admiral Harrison nodded approvingly. "That will be the hardest battle you ever fight. Changing minds is more difficult than winning wars. But it is worth it." Princess Kalara touched the human insignia on her armor. Yes, she thought. It would be worth it. The humans had terrified her today. Not with their weapons, not with their numbers, but with their wisdom, and that was the most frightening and wonderful thing she had ever experienced. 2 months had passed since the day that almost became a war. Epsilon Outpost looked very different now. Where there had been tension and fear, now there was activity and hope. Construction crews from both species worked side by side. They were building something new, something that had never existed before. The grand ceremony hall was filled with people, humans in their formal uniforms, Valthek in their ceremonial robes, representatives from a dozen other species who had come to witness this historic moment. Everyone wanted to see if peace between two powerful civilizations could really work. Princess Kalara stood at the center of the hall. She wore formal diplomatic robes instead of armor. The robes were beautiful, decorated with traditional Valthek patterns. But they were soft, not hard. Welcoming, not threatening. The change in her appearance reflected the change in her thinking. Admiral Kyle Harrison stood across from her. He wore his full dress uniform with all his medals, but his face was relaxed, almost happy. The sadness that had been there before was gone. This was what he had hoped for, what he had worked for. Ambassador Diana Foster stepped forward to speak. Her voice carried through the hall with confidence and warmth. Today we witness something rare and precious. Two peoples who nearly destroyed each other have chosen a better path. The accord of two peoples is more than a treaty. It is a promise to learn from each other, to protect each other, to grow together. The crowd applauded. Princess Kailara and Admiral Harrison approached the ceremonial table. The treaty document waited there, displayed on a holographic screen. Both leaders placed their hands on the signing panel. Their signatures appeared in light, binding their civilizations together. "It is done," Princess Kailara said. Her voice was steady but emotional. "Let this day be remembered not as the day we nearly went to war, but as the day we chose peace." The applause was louder this time. Humans and Valthek stood together, celebrating. In the crowd, Princess Kailara saw familiar faces. War Commander Draxus stood with a human military advisor. They were talking quietly. Draxus looked uncomfortable, but he was trying. That was something. Princess Kailara had refused Draxus's resignation after the failed battle. Instead, she had given him a new mission. Lead cultural sensitivity training for all Valthek military officers. Learn about other species. Teach others what you learn. It was not a punishment. It was an opportunity. Draxus was beginning to understand that. Chancellor Orthak had stepped down voluntarily. He was old and his thinking was from another time. But he did so with grace. He recommended young Vexar as his replacement. The Emperor had agreed. Fresh thinking was needed for this new era. Vexar now stood near Princess Kailara as High Chancellor. He wore the robes of his office proudly. He had been right to trust the humans. His caution and wisdom had helped save the Empire from disaster. The ceremony continued with speeches and celebrations, but the real work had already begun weeks ago. Human engineers worked with Valthek scientists in research facilities. They shared knowledge about stealth technology. The Valthek were amazed by what they learned. The humans had been generations ahead in some areas. In return, Valthek metallurgists taught humans about their advanced armor designs. Human ships would be stronger now, better protected. Both species benefited from the exchange. Dr. Helen Nakamura led a xenobiology program. Young Valthek and humans studied together. They learned about each other's biology, culture, and history. Understanding grew. Friendships formed. The future was being built by these young people who had never known war between their species. Captain Vincent Cruz trained Valthek Special Forces in human tactical thinking. He taught them about strategy that avoided casualties, about precision over power, about thinking 3 steps ahead. The Valthek warriors were eager students. They recognized true expertise when they saw it. After the public ceremony ended, a smaller group gathered for a private dinner. Princess Kailara had requested this. She wanted to celebrate with the people who had made peace possible, the people who had changed her world. The dinner was held in a simple room overlooking space. Stars filled the windows. The table was set with both human and Valthek dishes. Everyone tried food from both cultures. Some dishes were delicious. Some were challenging. Everyone laughed at the different reactions. Princess Kailara stood with a glass in her hand. She looked around the table at the faces gathered there. Admiral Harrison, Ambassador Foster, Captain Cruz, Dr. Nakamura, Vexar, War Commander Draxus, and others who had worked for peace. "To the war we did not fight," she said, raising her glass. Admiral Harrison raised his glass in response. "And to the peace we chose instead." Everyone drank. Then conversation filled the room. Natural and easy. War Commander Draxus and Captain Cruz discovered they had both commanded ground forces in difficult battles. They shared stories, found common ground in their experiences. Respect grew between them. Dr. Nakamura and a Valthek scientist named Korax debated the differences in their species' nervous systems. Their conversation was animated and enthusiastic, pure intellectual joy. This was what peace looked like. People free to learn and share and grow together. Ambassador Foster sat back in her chair and watched everything. She had worked for peace her entire adult life. She had seen so many failures, so many wars that could have been avoided. But tonight she saw success. Real lasting success. It made all the difficult years worth it. Princess Kailara found herself sitting next to Admiral Harrison. They talked quietly while the party continued around them. She asked him questions she had been wondering about. He answered honestly. No secrets between them now. "Were you afraid that day?" she asked. When you revealed your hidden fleet, Admiral Harrison nodded, terrified, not of you, but of what might happen if you refused to listen. If pride forced us into a real war, I did not want to see young people die for old leaders' mistakes. Princess Kalara smiled sadly. I was terrified too. When I finally understood what we had done, what we had nearly caused, I thought my pride had doomed my people. Admiral Harrison looked at her with respect. But you learned. You changed. That takes more courage than any battle. Some leaders never learn that lesson. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Princess Kalara asked one more question. What happens now? Where do we go from here? Admiral Harrison gestured to the room around them. This we build. We learn. We grow stronger together. And when threats come, as they always do, we face them as allies, not as enemies. News of the human Valthek Accord spread through the galaxy quickly. Other civilizations took notice. Some were impressed. Some were nervous. The two most powerful military forces in this sector had joined together. That changed the balance of power dramatically. Several smaller civilizations reached out to establish diplomatic relations with both humans and Valthek. They wanted to be friends with this new alliance, not enemies. The Valthek Empire's reputation changed. They were no longer seen as just conquerors. Now they were known for wisdom, for choosing peace over pride. Princess Kalara became the most popular royal heir in recent Valthek history. The people respected her courage to change. 3 years passed. The alliance grew stronger every day. Then a new threat appeared. An aggressive species called the Kryn invaded from beyond known space. They attacked both human and Valthek colonies without warning. The joint human-Valthek fleet responded immediately. Princess Kalara, now queen after her father's peaceful retirement, commanded the Valthek forces. Admiral Harrison, though officially retired, served as strategic advisor. Together they coordinated their forces perfectly. The Kryn expected divided enemies. Instead, they faced a united front. Human technology combined with Valthek's strength proved unstoppable. The invasion was defeated within months. Thousands of lives were saved because two civilizations had learned to work together. The disputed star systems, once the source of conflict, became a shared economic zone. Trade flourished. Mixed colonies were established. Human and Valthek children grew up together. A new generation that saw cooperation as normal, not exceptional. A monument was erected on Epsilon Outpost. It stood in the main plaza where thousands passed every day. The inscription was simple but powerful, written in both human and Valthek languages. Here peace was nearly lost, then found again. May we never forget that the hardest battles are the ones we choose not to fight. Queen Kalara visited that monument often. She would stand before it and remember the fear, the pride, the shame, and finally the hope. She wore Admiral Harrison's insignia still, right next to her royal decorations. A reminder of the day she learned that true strength was not about domination. It was about wisdom, about choosing the harder path of peace, about being powerful enough to destroy but wise enough not to. That was what made humans terrifying, not their weapons, not their numbers, their restraint, their mercy, their refusal to become the monsters they could be. And in learning that lesson, the Valthek Empire had become something greater than it ever was before. Not through conquest, through partnership, through peace. The princess in armor had gone to war. The queen in robes had found peace, and the galaxy was better for it.